Boom.
Ready
There
for
we
it.
I
are.
love the subtitles. Thumb around the bar, thumb over the bar. Okay, this is good. I'm in the middle.
Yep. Yes, you are.
That's
Deliberately
not
Oh,
so.
good.
okay.
I
So,
feel torn.
Does it
so
like depend? Does it depend on the movement?
it
My thumb's
shouldn't.
always wrapped around the bar.
See?
Okay.
But
Well, for anyone who's just jumped into the middle of this, welcome to the Talking Average Fitness podcast. Of course, my name is Sam. I'm here all the time. You should always wrap your thumbs around the bar, no matter what my compatriot, Mr. Kevin McCarthy, says. Kevin, how the hell are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm even better because I don't wrap my thumb around the bar because I'm not a nerd.
Oh, good. We're off to a great start. So, if
it's
you
I'm very outnumbered on this podcast. I know I'm going to be outnumbered on this, and like in most people in gymnastics, I'm going to be very outnumbered, but that's fine.
Yeah. Well, that's a nice segue here. So, of course, stuff between the two of us. Careful is Drew here, and so Drew Zaro is a good friend of mine, both personally and professionally. And I met you kind of roundabout,
yeah,
and our relationship has kind of grown and deepened in the way that Instagram relationships that kind of grow and deepen,
Mhm.
weirdly and organically, but also very very coolly. I would love for people to hear. I like to call it the world record Fran time version of kind of like who you are and
Yeah,
where you came from and what you're doing now, both personally and professionally.
yeah. Name's Drew. Grew up and was born and raised in Massachusetts. I live here now. After high school, I was in college, doing the normal thing, going to college because that's what people do. And I realized I had no idea why I was going to college. So I just up and left after 3 semesters, joined the Marine Corps. Ended up after saying, I'll just go for one contract, usually 4 years or so. Ended up staying in for 13 years. So, oops, how did that happen? Because I had fun. I ended up in the intel side of things, so doing military intelligence for all 13 years. Kind of led me down a unique career path, including 2 combat deployments to Iraq. After that, got to go back and be an instructor, a teacher, essentially at my intel schoolhouse. Got to teach brand new Marines how to do my job, and then brand new officers as well. Um, Planning on getting out from there, they said, "Hey, do you want to go to Croatia? You have language abilities." I had previously learned Arabic, spent 18 months doing so before my combat deployments, and I said, "Sure, I'll learn Croatian and we'll go to Croatia." I got to take my family at that point with me, and it was great. And that's kind of in that period between being an instructor and a diplomat over those kind of 5, 6, 7 years. That's where I found CrossFit, somewhere in there. I can't remember what call it was. We'll say 2011 or so. Everyone in the military was experimenting with. Classman was kind of dropping it into military units, and it found its way to me. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2017
Hmm.
with intent to provide some stability to my my family a bit, and really just kind of get out of the hecticness that is the military. It wasn't really where I wanted to be long term. I had an opportunity to join my uncle at his investment advisory practice, which is what I do now. And so I took it, moved back to Massachusetts, got my level one, started coaching, went through that whole, new to coaching. And this is how we air squat, all that stuff. And I got kind of addicted to being able to develop people. And I was able to almost parallel that with my career in finance. I've been doing this for 5.5 years now, as a way to coach individuals to almost a better position in life financially. Um, and so that's been great. Being able to, I tell this, I work with the CrossFit Gymnastics team, TGC, the gymnastics course, and so on weekends I like to, and when I intro to myself, I let people know it's fun for me that I get to by day make people better financially, and then on the weekends, and I used to coach CrossFit locally, I get to make people physically better. So
Hmm.
it's a nice, well-rounded approach to coaching, and it's been fun for me. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Still live in Massachusetts, not planning to leave, just because I can't find a house anywhere. But that's not news news for anybody.
It's a whole other ball game.
So
Let's
that's
go.
me in a nutshell.
Very cool. Well, welcome, and I'm very excited to have you on, mostly because you agree with me about the thumb over the bar thing, and
Mhm.
we'll see if my film stops
Does Kevin
freezing
drink
on me.
coffee like this or like
Yeah,
this?
right. Hang on. Stop camera. Turn camera back on. I don't know. I don't know what's going there. Can you guys still hear me?
I can still hear
I
you.
can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're gonna roll with it.
you're
Um,
just
I'm just frozen, so that'll
yeah.
end up being its thing. Anyway, so
There's not enough pixels to encapsulate your beauty.
Let's see.
see, I know you tell me all the time, Kev.
I do.
Yeah.
Not
S-
lying.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because, one, you're a really smart cat. And when you talk, I listen. And one of the things that you have talked about recently that I think is really interesting, and we touch base on this in this podcast more than every once in a while, is this notion of practice, right? So, how thoughtful and mindful practice can be worked into our workouts, and just worked into our training in general. And then there's, of course, the discussion between practice and training and what are those things? And then what are the benefits that we reap when we do that? I saw something, which I think this is a nice way to kind of segue into this. I saw something you posted recently where you're talking about how you had a bunch of knee issues and you have very carefully and very deliberately worked yourself to a position where in the video you were doing full depth pistol squats on what I assume was your quote unquote bad knee.
Yep.
And I think that's a nice jumping off point for what was the background to that? And then how did it get you to where you were in that little video there?
Yeah. I don't know when my knee issues started. This is hilarious and ironic. We're having this conversation because I just had my what we call a compensation and pension exam at the Department of Veterans Affairs today. So they kind of go over some issues that I have that stem from the military, and my knees are one of those issues. But I don't know when this issue started. I can assume it's an overuse issue. I was pretty deep into being as fit as I could back in 2020. Had the time to do it, and I think as a result, 2021 started to rear its head in the form of some overuse injuries that came up. And so my left knee was one of those things. And it was a lot of pain, no stability, just completely inability to find any sort of power. So box jumps, double unders went away completely. And it got a little bit concerning for me. So I've been just doing my best, going to physical therapists, doing all the things that I know how to do to repair it. And just knowing that I want to get back to being able to do pistol squats again at some point in my life, but I don't need to do pistol squats at any point in my life. It's something that I like to do because it's a cool skill. It's also something that's kind of a part of my job being with CrossFit Gymnastics, having to be able to coach that. I'd like to be able to demo it too. But it was frustrating because I had tried it a few times early on when my knee was garbage, and the results were exactly as you'd think they would be. So I just kind of have taken a lot of time to figure out, while my body was really hurting, shoulders have been an issue, left knee has been an issue. What is it that I want long term? And I just, when I was really, really fit, I was like, this is what makes me go. I like being really, really fit. And everybody likes being really, really fit because it allows me specifically to do the things that I really like to do. Just not spend time in the gym putting up the heaviest weights, but it's to climb mountains. It's to do sports that I've never done before. So over the last 3-4 years, I learned how to downhill mountain bike. I learned how to just mountain bike in general. I grew up doing BMX biking, but one of my friends got me into downhill mountain biking, which has been phenomenal. Maybe also resulted in some injuries. That's okay. That's the point of being fit. But in the process, I realized I just want my body healthy. That's actually really what I want. I want to be able to go do things whatever I want to do them. I don't necessarily need to do them faster than everybody, but because this knee injury was so devastating to me, I literally spent the winter of 21, 22 trying to get my knee ready so I could hike last summer. I don't do any crazy hikes. I don't do overnights, just all day hikes, out and backs, things like that. But, that's what I like to do. I spend my time in the mountains in Maine and New Hampshire in the summers, and I didn't want to not be able to do that. So I spent a lot of time just doing the little stuff, right? The boring stuff, the unfun stuff, getting my hips stronger, my posterior stronger, working on some ankle mobility, things that you're not going to put on Instagram because everyone's like, oh, cool, great job, grandpa, awesome. But in reality, those are the things. Even when I go to a CrossFit class now, if I don't show up early enough to do my specific warm up, I don't do the CrossFit warm up. I'll do my warm up. And if I feel like I can slide into the Metcon with the class, I'll do that. But what comes first has been those little stupid things that make my hips stronger, my knees stronger, my ankles stronger. And that's been huge to me to help me realize that not only does that help me improve my knee, but I can use those practice sessions to get better at anything. Whether it's handstands, whether it's writing in cursive, you can practice any skill, and over time it's going to get better. And so that was really cool for me to almost relearn that. We all know it, but actually practicing it is the hard part, because what do you want to do once you're fully warmed up in the gym? I want to throw around a heavy barbell. I want to do some cool gymnastic stuff. I want to go as fast as I possibly can. And then some days I want to put that on Instagram because it's fun to show off, right?
Yeah.
We all have a little bit of an ego, and I certainly fall into that category. But what I realized in the process is like, I can learn some really cool stuff that's maybe not super impressive off the get-go, but it leads to cooler stuff later on, right? So the pistol squat is one example of that. And I was so excited the other day when, I sent to my fiance the video of me doing it before I posted on Instagram. And I was like, you have no idea how excited this makes me. This is way better than like a PR or my clean and jerk. Like, cause I actually thought at one point, I was like, I think my knee's done. I think this might be it for me, in doing anything crazy, anything heavy. And I put pistol squats into the crazy category because I think in CrossFit, we can, a lot of us can do pistols, but like, zoom out a bit, nobody does pistols as a 38-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You ask a 38-year-old construction worker to squat down on one leg, he's going to be like, okay. And that's the end of my career. So it is crazy. And it's been fun for me to rediscover the joy in learning, because that's really what we're doing, right? You're training your body and your nervous system on how to do things that are hard, but not impossible. Right. And that's where I'm at. I'm a 38-year-old guy trying to do the same things that my 11-year-old daughter and her friends practice in gymnastics at her gymnastics academy. And I have no shame in the fact that, I have to go back to the basics and do these stupid banded exercises with like a 5-pound resistance band. But at the end of the day, like, I now have a little bit more confidence that this year is going to be a better hiking season than next year. And my mountain biking will be less of an issue when I go for uphill climbs in my mountain bike. I don't have to worry about my knee being a problem. Hopefully. We still have some work to do. But long story short, it's been almost a rediscovery of the learning process, kind of in a smaller time frame. No camera on me, nothing sexy to post here. Really, not even any sweat, right? There's a lot of those practice sessions of not even sweating.
Yeah.
And that's just been really fun for me.
I love so much of what you said. And what I love most about it is right at the front half, it started with, I asked myself what's important to me. Like, what do I want to do? What are my goals? And everything stemmed from that. And, I think that is missed so often in so many different avenues of life. Certainly training. It could even go into finance, and as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, oh man, like there's a lot of this that applies to finance as well. This concept of what do I want? How do I identify the steps? Like, let me identify the steps that are going to get me to where I want to be, because that's what's going to bring me joy or what's going to help me fulfill my purpose. And then I'm going to execute on that. The slow, dreary, kind of like trudging progress through that very unsexy stuff. But that on the back end of that, you're reaping the benefit that really is moving the needle in your personal life, and maybe not Instagram worthy, in the traditional sense of something that is Instagram worthy or not. But to clarify, as you're doing those pistol squats, like, what was your pain level inside of those reps?
The other day it was super surprising because I took, before I even did that, I was warming up and doing my stuff for 40 minutes before I even tried a pistol squat. First ones I tried, I just did it with a spot on the opposite hand. And then those pistol squats, I was like, all right, this is going to be horrible. And it's going to hurt so bad. And I'm probably going to regret it. And I did the first one. There was zero pain.
Awesome.
Maybe a 1 on some of them. So I did 5 total reps each on each leg. And my quads are absolutely destroyed today.
Yeah.
But like, my hope is as high as it's ever been. And the fact that like, I'll be able to I can bend down and not have to worry about like going eye to eye with my kids and being in pain to do so. Right. That's like the biggest thing for me is like, can you imagine wanting to get down on your kid's level or your grandkids level at some point? And you're like, oh, I can't, like, I'll be sitting in this chair and you can come over to me. Like, that's sad. Like, I want to be able to see my grandkid running up to me and give him a big hug from the soccer field, me take a knee to do that. It's like, these are the things that help you be able to do that in 30 years, right? That strategic forethought. And it really comes down to compound growth, right? So I'm trying to find that compound growth in the physical side.
Yeah.
It exists in the financial world too. It exists literally everywhere. It exists in the mental process side that, we all go through every single day when we wake up.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned like talking about kids. I know a gentleman at my first affiliate, CrossFit Medfield. He is an absolute beast of a human, a huge, massive man, and one of the strongest people I know of. And that's considering the circle of people who like I'm in, like that's saying something. And this guy, when he wants to like get down and look into a cupboard, he has to do a burpee because something in his knee is that bad. And so it's radically affected his life. And he's on that same path. He's on that same path to very carefully, very steadily, very deliberately rebuilding that joint, rebuilding that range of motion, and doing so in a manner that's not going to cost him down the road.
Yep.
And I mean, of course, all of this falls into the whole Kaba side of the 10 general physical skills. And we've talked about this before. Your first half, which is all training, and the middle two, work by both in coordination, accuracy, agility, and balance. As you're doing those things, first of all, Kevin, how virtuous is your pistol squat?
Me personally,
Yeah.
no comment.
You can lie because I've never seen it.
That's true. I don't think I have either.
No, damn it, missed opportunity. I could have sworn Sam had seen me do a pistol squat at some point.
I don't think so.
No, it's like I haven't done pistol squats in a while. Not due to like a knee injury, just due to taking a bit of time off of CrossFit for pursuing more soccer activities.
Sure.
But like very rarely do my heels stay on the floor. The way I achieve a pistol squat is to jam that knee as far forward as humanly possible and then bounce my butt off my calves. And it works amazingly.
Yeah. Have you heard how Carl from Whiteboard Daily describes trying to get people into a pistol squat?
No.
So you bend forward and grab your toe and then rock your butt down.
Oh no, I saw that actually. Did he write that up last week? I feel like I saw that.
Something like it was on a thing, and I actually tried it. I'm like, this is harder than I want it to be. I don't want to do that. But it's we can go down this rabbit hole a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, for sure.
How, as you're kind of rebuilding this stuff, like what ancillary benefits have you noticed? I mean, we're talking about a very, very niche, very specific application of the concept of practice, right?
Yeah.
But through this very deliberate application of practice that we know involves, it's not training, it's not getting your body, up to a certain temperature or your heart rate up to a certain level. You're not moving a load of 70% of something, whatever. This is, from a physiological level, sub 50% of your maximum heart rate, sub 50% of your like maximum loading, because it's body weight, and it's really careful and deliberate. Like, what are some side benefits that you notice when you do work like this? Like, how is this manifested otherwise?
The obvious ones are, I'm not as fit as I used to be. I did the open. I didn't sign up for the open. I did the open workouts, and I didn't know I was going to do the open workouts. And so, like, I guess there's like a primary benefit. It's just my fitness has just gotten better without over exposing myself to metabolic conditioning, monostructural stuff, anything like that. It's just because I find myself extremely efficient in what it is that I do. So like, for example, I haven't done wall balls in forever.
Right.
I haven't done pistol squats in forever. I haven't done wall balls in forever because I'm not bringing my hip anywhere near my knee.
Right.
Because I want this to be healthy and a smart kind of progress. So about a month and a half ago, I think I did my first wall balls. Extremely sore from those wall balls. But with like an 8-pound wall ball to an 8-foot target, that's where I started. There was no pain. And so that we kind of progressed through there. And I, again, we talked about this earlier, rediscovered the value in progression. Slowly and smartly, but it gave me like a really good sense for people that come into your gym that have never done CrossFit, maybe have never touched any sort of realm of fitness since they left high school or college. Because I think that we forget that in the bigger picture, that when people come into the CrossFit gym, we don't recognize that they have not done 10,000 wall balls. They've actually not done a wall ball ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just wondering why they have an immature squat and they can't hold the wall ball upright with the upright torso. And so me understanding that this is what people are struggling to just get to. They're trying to get to a pain-free, full range wall ball with an 8-pounder to an 8-foot wall. Like I also got to struggle with that too, and realize like, okay, like this journey is bigger than the clock. It's bigger than the rep count. It's bigger than the open. It's bigger than all of that. It's really comes down to, are you willing to do boring stuff to get better? And so like outside of fitness, I've actually found value in that as well. And trying to just two things: communicate better with my son. He's 13, so we are headstrong into the puberty world right now. So before puberty started, like a year ago, him and I sat down, had a conversation, and we talked about what happens during puberty in terms of the brain, especially the male brain. We know what happens. It stops working. Nothing functions appropriately. So I told him, I said, I am on your team. And I need you to know that I'll be on your team until you die. Until I die, I'm on your team. And we have to communicate if we're going to succeed. So being able to take that back and realize, okay, if I have to teach a 13-year-old how to communicate, teaching a 13-year-old how to do anything, God save us all. But I got to teach him and have been teaching him and will continue to teach him proper ways to communicate with his father better, and hopefully everyone else in his life. It's a learning process. There's learning that has to happen to learn how to communicate well. It's not just, hey, do this better, and then the next time he does it.
Yeah.
So just like learning how to do the small things appropriately in the gym, I'm learning how to teach my son how to communicate. Also in my job, I realize and have realized for a long time that there's way more efficient ways that my business can be ran. I run a business with my uncle. He's been doing this for 39 years, I think. I've been doing it for 5.5 years. There's a huge disparity in age there. But the goal is to kind of keep the business resilient for generations to come. So his older clients will continue on and hopefully stay on as, their heirs, assume their inheritance and stay with me, hopefully. But for that to happen, the business needs to become modernized, has to improve, have to find efficiencies. So there's learning that has to happen there. There's slow progression that has to happen, changes that have to happen inside the business. And so I find that the best effects that I found from getting my knee where I want it to be or on the path is being okay with highlighting deficiencies, highlighting what has to be done, and also understanding the boring steps ahead. Because it's really true for every part in life. If people walk around with their TikTok or Instagram that says, they have a growth mindset in their bio. They say I'm growth oriented, right? But like, are you actually growth oriented to the point where you're able to be like, this is what I'm doing wrong, and I know it. This is where I want to be, and I'm going to marry those two. And it doesn't happen in easy, sensible, big strides. It's usually, 3 tiny steps forward and then maybe 1 giant step backwards at times. And learning that right now at age 38, when you really don't want to screw up anymore, I'm 38, and I'm ready to just kind of be on the smooth sailing part of life. But though I'm now realizing over the last 10 years, there is no smooth sailing part of life. And when you do have it all figured out, you're closer to dying than you'd probably be happy to be. So really, I think to answer your question in short, though, that's what I found is the learning process and the development process, just understanding it better for myself, but also helping those around me, whether it's my son, whether it's, people that I coach at CGC seminar, or anyone in between.
Interesting. I could keep endlessly asking questions. I want to make sure that I don't just monopolize this whole thing. Kevin, deliberately shutting myself up and throwing things in your direction. Do you have any questions or thoughts before I keep going?
No. I just relate to your journey of what? Listen, this is why we pay you the big bucks, because you come up with all the questions. You're the big brain guy. I just throw in just like a witty comment here or there, and that's about it. But
you are very witty.
I fully appreciate and understand your journey of trying to get your knee back in fighting order, because I went through the same thing this past year with my right, like kind of lower back and hip area. I made the incredibly bright move of trying to fully and radically change my squatting patterns under load. So it was a fun time. Seemed like the right thing to do. I had a squat program to do. I want to squat better. Let's just make that happen. And then my spine decided to say, no, not today. So in the process of kind of like rehabbing stuff, I found out like I have all these different deficiencies in and around my hips that was affecting my lower back and such. And I spent basically the last year doing exactly as you said, all the little things, trying to all the stuff that you never like, more banded side steps and clamshells and anything else like that, like hip external internal rotation that would never make it on an Instagram highlight reel. Doing all those for the past year so I can get my hips back in order and functioning properly and make it so I can do an air squat without wanting to unalive myself. So I fully get your journey and appreciate it. Different joints, but same kind of idea.
Story,
so, yeah.
It's funny to think about that while you're talking. Kind of what came to my mind is like what you're saying, and I think that people categorize those things, right? The banded side steps, like that's accessory work, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we forget that those 10 components of fitness, right? We like to focus on those, and while the Kaba side of things, that oriented more on the practice sessions, like that's not accessory work. That's actually, you're supposed to dedicate sessions to those things. And I'm guilty of it. I probably could go months without ever touching one of those, or the old me could have gone months without touching anything on the Kaba side of that equation. But now I realize like I could spend 15 minutes just doing balance stuff, as it relates to gymnastics, because it's my job and because balance is really, really important when it comes to gymnastics. Hence the balance beam, everything, and floor routine, vault, all that stuff. I don't do any of that stuff, but in gymnastics, obviously balance is a hugely important skill. But like just being able to spend time on those things and also realize like you get just as much value in a different way than you do with a heavy squat program. It all comes full circle back to making you a more resilient physical being, right? And it's hard to be like, I'm going to spend 15 minutes standing on one leg today. Not squatting on one leg. I'm just going to stand on one leg. I'm going to raise it up to the front. I'm going to raise it up to the back. And we're going to see how strong my balance can get. Like, that's so stupid, but it's really not, because it's, those are the reasons that give you access to your physical, body. What we're meant to do.
The first thing that's popping into my brain is slips. Like,
yeah, that's the same thing for me. It's like, as soon as you said that, I was like, slips.
Yep. So my exposure to the first time I met Drew, I took December of 2019, I think it was. It was just before COVID hit. I took a TGC course at Reebok CrossFit 1, and Drew was the assist, and Tony Ronke was the lead. And I love the way that Tony described these things. It's, gymnastics is rude. It gives no F's. Like, what you hope, for your fitness to be. Whereas like the barbell is really, really good at allowing us to externally validate, our worth as athletes. If I put 1/2 kilo on the bar more than the last time I did this, I am better. Whereas the progression for gymnastics is so incredibly slow and very unsexy. But, and Kevin and I have talked about this a lot. It's not a stretch to say that CrossFit, as it is practiced in a lot of affiliates nowadays, has gotten away from the original traditional model that was a single workout of the day with focused and deliberate warm up and or practice folded into it. And then some days that were nothing but practice. I mean, you go back into .com and it's not uncommon to see as you're scrolling by, Monday heavy clean, Tuesday Metcon, Wednesday practice slips for 20 minutes. And like, that's the whole thing, and I have lost count of the number of people who don't know what slips is. So just really quick. So slips is an acronym: scales, L-sits, inversions, planks, and stretching, right? And when Drew was talking about, bouncing on one foot, raise a foot up to the back, raise a foot up to the front, that kind of thing, that's a scale: front scale, back scale. And it looks like you're doing ballet if you do it right and you make it pretty. which is really, really cool and so much harder than you think. You know, you're like, yeah, I'm going to balance on one foot. Cool. Do it for more than 10 seconds and then come talk to me. Now keep going for another 2.5 minutes.
Close your eyes and try it for 10 seconds. It's even harder.
Oh gosh. That was the most humbling thing. If either of you have ever had a concussion, that's like part of the protocol, like coming back, like, we're going to test your balance. So like, huh? Oh, Sam was muted. It sounded like, it looked like he said something. But it's like, that's part of the protocol for like coming back from a concussion is they'll like test how well you can balance and like kind of, you know, motor control thing. And so you're like, all right, standing on one foot. Awesome. Now standing your foot with your eyes closed. I'm like, man, I can't do that normally.
No.
It's ridiculous. That, and when they're like, say the months backwards, I'm like, I can't do that at baseline.
You could write it down for me. I'll still have a hard time with it.
You could lay it out on a thing and I just have to read it backwards. I'd still just, no, can't do it. All right. Sam's having so many issues with his technological thing. I think he said his audio was done.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
You'll pay your bills, Sam.
That's jeez.
Kids these days.
Well, while he figures it out, for like when we're talking about
Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I can't hear you. So keep having a conversation for a minute.
Okay.
It's amazing. So when we're talking about slips, I mean, again, it's your scales, L-sits, inversions, planks, and stretching. As you're going through, I mean, each one of those, like the way it's kind of written makes you think you're doing all 5 in the 20-minute practice session or the 30 minutes of the thing. You could pick for just one of those and have an incredibly productive session. Exactly in the way we're saying, like you can do all your rehab and smaller movement, smaller joint stuff. And it gets like a similar level of benefit just as like a heavy squat day. It just looks different. It allows you to access different ranges of motion, access different levels of balance and athleticism that maybe you wouldn't have had prior. I mean, I still feel like I'll tell people to do this. Like, if you stretch 20 minutes a day, the quality of life that you have will like exponentially just increase. If you go from 0 stretching to 20 minutes of stretching a day, like you're probably going to feel like a god, like in a few weeks, because you're no longer stiff and tight. It no longer takes you 72 minutes to warm up in class, type thing. And that's part of that slips prescription. If you just took that 20 minutes on that day and just stretched and worked range of motion, or whether it's an active stretch, passive stretch, combination of both, you'd probably be way better off than being like, nah, that's stupid. I'm going to max out my snatch instead. Because we all know that's what you would do.
Right.
That's what 22-year-old me would do. Stretching's dumb. Let's snatch.
It's ironic you ended that with like, let's snatch instead, because as I was talking about like balance.
Yep.
How many times have you seen someone fail a snatch because they lack balance at the receiving position at the bottom of their overhead squat? Right. I've done it. I've probably missed PRs because I just lack balance. At the time, I thought it was, I should have pressed out more, or it's too far on my heels, but it's balance. It's just balance. That's all it is. And so 15 minutes practicing balance 3 times a week for 15 minutes over the course of a year, 2 years, you've been doing CrossFit longer than that. So that should tell you that if you're having balance issues, you should probably practice balance. Just like if you have snatching issues, technique wise, you should practice snatching. If you have weak quads, you should practice high bar back squatting, right? So all these things are, we're very aware of what we need to practice when it comes to external load, but we're very unaware of how to practice those Kaba things and how they carry over into every single thing else we do. But like you said, everything gets better when you do it.
Yeah.
Everything.
Go ahead.
When you had said that, like, you know, the lack of balance in the snatch, one of my favorite things that Matt Fraser has ever said was amazing. And this is, so like, I competed in weightlifting for about 2.5, 3 years while I was in college. So I really, like, this resonated with me, is he was talking about like one of his garage gym things. I think he was talking to Heber and Mars. They're doing like a Buttery Bros video or something. And they were talking about like one of his garage gyms had like a super small platform. Like there wasn't much depth, like forward or backwards. It was wide enough for the bar, but it was like very narrow front to back.
Yep.
And they were like, it's kind of weirding us out, like kind of freaking us out that you've got such a small, like limited area to work with. Like, what do you do if you walk forward with a snatch? And Matt kind of looked at him and goes, well, if you're walking with a snatch, you're doing it wrong. I was like, yes.
Can't argue that.
You can't. I was like, I sat there, like, it made my heart happy. I'm like, that. What do you do if you walk with a snatch? Well, just don't walk with a snatch. Do it right.
Yeah, just do better.
Yeah, exactly. So that was just the first thing that popped in my head was that statement there. Like, if you don't have the balance to do a snatch properly, probably don't chuck 10 more pounds on and try again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, now that I've fixed my weird audio issues, which is surprising, I never have a problem with this.
You're having you're just having a time today, Sam.
It is, yeah,
Lost
it's a party
video,
over here.
Lost audio.
So knowing, okay, it's all well and good for us, to talk about this as people who are coaches and people who are invested in being the best coaches that we can be, and or being, subject matter experts or on specialty teams and things like that. For us to say, well, if you have an issue with balance, you probably shouldn't screw around with chucking more weight on the bar, and you should work on your balance. One of the big misses that I think is happening is, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Drew, like, especially as someone who has traveled and coached at different affiliates across the country, like, I feel like there is a big miss both in the community of athletes and the community of coaches for understanding and diagnosing those issues and having the knowledge and willingness to step back and work on those quote unquote basic skills in order to allow their athletes or themselves or whoever to actually make tangible steps forward at a later time. I would say on two hands count the number of coaches who I would trust to see an issue like you've got balance issues in your snatch. I can count on two hands the number of coaches who I know who would say, okay, well, the issue is not to do more snatching and to instead go way backwards. We're going to go PVC pipe for 4 weeks, right? As opposed to someone be like, oh, no, you just have to overhead squat heavy and get really, really comfortable in the bottom, and so I feel like we're missing something as a community of athletes and coaches. How, first of all, have you noticed that? Like, do you agree, or do you think I'm totally missing the bus there? And then two, have you had any luck communicating that and getting people to kind of like turn the corner on going backwards to go forwards, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some luck with it. I'll tell you, most of the luck that I have with it, it's not luck. It's because people pay a lot of money, relatively speaking, to spend a weekend with us with CrossFit Gymnastics. I'm always so grateful when I get to go to those seminars every single time. Yeah, I'm paid to do it. I get that. I'm paid to travel to do it. I get that. That's great. Aside from that, the people that show up to those seminars are not the same people that show up to Monday morning CrossFit class. Okay. The people that show up to Monday morning CrossFit class, unfortunately, are conditioned to understand RX or scale targets, right? Yeah. There's a target that they have to hit. And so heavier means better, more reps means better, faster time means better. But no one has ever told them one time that better is better. And no one understands, how do you measure better?
Yeah.
And all of those things, ironically, on the I guess it depends on what side you look at, on the Kaba side of that spectrum, coordination, agility, accuracy, and balance, all of those things are also measurable. They're also improvable, just like your snatch is measurable, improvable, just like your 1 mile time on the track is measurable, improvable. So when you can break someone of the mold of exhaustion is not the goal, but betterment and physical resilience of your body, and as a secondary result, your mind, better is truly the target that we should be aiming for. And unfortunately, it's a moving target, because as you get older, your body changes, your life circumstances change. And because of that, you have to pivot. And so while you might have been making huge progress in your weightlifting, You just made a career change, and now you have to actually work 10 hours a day,
Yeah.
5 days a week, but you also have work you have to do at home on the weekend. So now you do not have time for 2-hour sessions 5 days a week in the weightlifting gym. It's the same reason that I had to kind of rediscover some gymnastics skills that I thought I had accomplished, quote unquote, or checked the box on years ago. And now I'm rediscovering those in a pistol squat, something I did 10 years ago and I was afraid to do 1 year ago. And I think it comes down to the connection that you have as a coach, the intangible connection. It's not your hips need to go down further, or, get that torso upright more. Those surface level cues that are just heard in every single gym echoing across the walls. But it comes down to helping people understand that this is so you can pick up the newspaper at the bottom of your driveway when you're 72. This is so you can, high five your grandson when he graduates high school. Both of those things require ranges of motion. They require strength. They require balance. They require coordination. You'll hear this at the gymnastics seminar sometimes, but one of the most untalked about things in life is getting old. None of us have any idea of what it's like to be geriatric and incapable. But how devastating is it to think about, because your inability or your lack of movement over a long period of time, you no longer have the ability to clean yourself up after you go to the bathroom because you lack thoracic rotation, right? How do we continue the ability to have thoracic rotation? Just rotate.
Yeah.
And that comes down to balance.
Yeah.
Right. Coordination. Those things that we practice, you're going to get thoracic mobility from doing thoracic extension and rotation, doing your slip stuff. I promise you that. Right. But people don't understand that because they're so focused on, I want to beat this person on the leaderboard. Sugarwad said this, so I have to get ahead of this. If I don't beat this person, that says a lot about me. But does it? Because that person's not going to be wiping your ass when you're 89. You are, I hope. Yeah. But if you're not, you're going to have to put your dignity to the side and have someone else do it for you, because you thought it was way more important to chase a heavier snatch, a faster Fran time, whatever that was, rather than taking a step back to look at why Glassman created this whole methodology in the first place. And it comes down to literally longevity. At least for me, it does. And I think for a lot of developed coaches, I think it's the same thing. I think I can speak for a lot of people that have spent time in the coaching world. It comes down to longevity and resilience, physical resilience, but it bleeds over into that mental resilience. And really that's where I think the most, luck or success has been found, with helping people discover the value in better being better, not more weight being better, faster being better.
Well, we had, God, it was forever and ever ago now, it seems like, but we had Pat Barber on and we talked about this. He's like, it's hard to understand the long-term virtue of the program, the methodology, until you're in it for a long time. And when you kind of divert and you go off and you do something and then you come back and you're like, oh, okay, that's why we do this way. And especially where everyone likes to make fun of it, but like at the tail end, before Glassman sold off, like after they got rid of the media team and they had the apartment, the living room set up for all of the videos, and they've got this gentleman, doing step down burpees and water jug deadlifts, and people, unless you go back and you're really devoted, I think a lot of people forget the amount of times infirmity is talked about in the level 1 manual, and how, one of my favorite Glassman quotes is, who would trade wonderful health markers, fantastic cholesterol and things like that, for an inability to, at 90 years old, ride around on a motorcycle with your wife or your girlfriend and walking yourself into a restaurant or a bar, And I think the answer that keeps coming back from people who are actually there is, no, of course, function is something that is wildly underrated. And I think I'm in the same boat as you. I'm 38 in a couple months. Even now, I have to deliberately work to put myself into a position to think about like what infirmity means and what infirmity looks like in or would look like in my own life and what it does look like in other people's lives. And really it's then that I see, I'm like, oh, Jesus, like this is why people squat. This is why people reach. This is why people hinge. This is, because if you don't, you won't.
Mm-hmm.
Brutal. So real quick, we're 44 minutes into this. I would love to, because one of the things that I do personally is I trust you with my money. And I trust you with my money because you're a smart man. And your business, Granite Wealth Management, yeah?
Yep.
See, we have talked on this podcast a lot about the very, very unsexy stuff and its wide-ranging benefits in every part of your fitness life, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist or an economist to be able to kind of pivot your brain and see similar intention and carry over from that intention in financial life, right?
Mm-hmm.
We made the crack earlier about, you're living in Massachusetts because you can't find a house anywhere else. Market's going to do what market's going to do,
Yep.
and economy's going to do what the economy's going to do. What's the question I want to ask here? I mean, I guess the question is like, short of making more money, what would you say is the biggest missed step by people when it comes to managing their own money that everybody can do? What is the slips of financial health?
Yeah, I think there's a couple parts to it. In short, though, reducing your debt. Simple one. I look at it the same way as nutrition sits on the CrossFit pyramid. It's at the bottom, right? You're carrying extra body weight. Everything is harder.
Yeah.
If you're carrying extra debt, that extra financial weight and burden, everything is harder. Get rid of the debt as fast as you can, as sensibly as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying don't pay your bills. The debt has to go away for you to actually feel like you have some sort of semblance of control over your now and your future, because your debt is your past. That's stuff that you've already spent, right? So let's get rid of that. Let's shave the past out of the let's shave the past out of affecting the here and now and what happens in the future. But knowing what you're spending, and I'm not saying stop spending. I'm saying know what you're spending.
Yeah.
Do a little exercise for yourself over the course of the month. Starts on the first of a month, just because it's nice and easy. I'm not saying you have to start fitness on a Monday, January 1st every single year, but to make it easy for yourself, start on the first of a month and just keep track of everything you spend.
Ooh.
On the first of the next month, sit down, whether it's yourself, with your partner, whoever it might be that spends money with you, and look at everything and be honest. Did you need to spend that on that?
Yeah.
If you did, great, cool. Now budget in. Now you know how much you spend every single month on X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, you got to pay yourself, and not your now self, but your future self. And so your future self, the one that hopefully can still wipe their ass at age 90, they rely just as much on that thoracic rotation from what you practice in your 30s and 40s, as much as they rely on what you paid for yourself in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s for your future self, because you're no longer earning money probably at age 80, at age 90. And even if you can, it doesn't mean you'll want to. At least give yourself the ability to choose that at those ages, right? So you can enjoy those sunshine years. And really that's it in short, is get rid of your debt, know what you're spending, and then pay your future self now every single time. It might be $5 this week, it might be $20 this week, but I promise you, if you're doing all those things right, some weeks you're going to be like, shit, I can put $250 away this week into a retirement account or into an investment account, or I can just put it into my savings account, but I don't need it. I just made too much money this week. That's a great problem to have. Yeah. You can't make too much money if you have too much debt and you're spending too much, and you can't know what those are until you know them. So everything's measurable. Everything that's measurable is improvable. So you have to measure it. And so that's why I say those things. It's simple, but it's not, because like slips, like weightlifting, it starts with the basics. It starts with the PVC pipe. It starts with picking one leg off the ground and closing your eyes and trying to balance,
Yeah. I mean, it's like the MyFitnessPal of financial health. Just keep track of everything, which, if honestly, people, if that doesn't terrify you, if that practice doesn't terrify you, you're probably well off already. I talk, because I love what you said. You got to get rid of debt first, right? And you're not saying don't pay your bills, but there are a lot of ways that you can go about like paying off debt. Like what is considered healthy debt versus like wildly unhealthy debt, right? Because
Yeah.
I'll use myself as an example. So my wife and I, we have a mortgage. We have a car that we're leasing currently with the intent of purchasing it. But I own my vehicle outright, and we are in the very fortunate position to be able to pay off our credit cards at the end of the month, right? So using me as a touch point, what could I do better? What would be amiss if I wasn't already doing something?
Yeah, I mean, kind of mortgage is one of those things that it's the nature of the world that we live in. You're gonna have a mortgage. You're gonna have a rent payment. So
Yeah.
as long as you can afford what it is that you're paying, um, and if you don't know what that number is of what it makes sense to you, you should probably chat with somebody, a professional that can really work you through those steps. There's rules of thumbs to it, but we won't get into it here.
Mhm.
Really comes down to that's a staple. You're gonna have to pay for that. Cars kind of in the same boat. Some people are okay driving something, a used car that they can just pay for in straight cash. Some people, want a little bit more than that, but it comes down to is that car that you're paying X for give you X worth of value in return? And that's going to be a pretty subjective question. I can't answer that for everybody.
Sure.
And everybody, sometimes they just want what they want.
Yeah.
Where it cuts slippery, though, is when we start to let the want what you want take over our decision making process. And to specifically answer your question about debt, what's unhealthy debt? It's the revolving debt that you're actually revolving debt being like credit cards, things like that you're using, but you're not doing it with purpose. Meaning, like what you said is the most important thing. At the end of every single month, we pay off our credit cards. I do the same thing. I put a lot of things on my credit card, even though I have cash for it. A, I don't like using my debit card in places I don't 100% trust. But B, I can get some points with the credit card that's turns into some semblance of value in the future if I ever want to use it. But if I'm spending, we'll say, $1,000 a month on my credit card, and I only have the means to pay back $780 of that, well, guess what? You're carrying over 220 every single month, and at some point, that's going to hurt bad. And I promise you that your cycle of spending on a credit card, or your habit of spending on a credit card, will be overly comfortable, way too comfortable. Just like sitting on the couch becomes too comfortable when you take time off from the gym. And we've all done it. Taking time off from the gym. How could I not want to sit on my couch for like 3 hours watching something, right? We all love it, but you get too used to it. That's where you're going to die.
Yeah.
Right. So you get too used to overspending on a credit card. So I always tell people, use your credit card if you want to, but if you've measured, we already talked about this, if you've already measured what you spend every single month, you already know what you can afford and what you can't afford, right? Because if you measured out $700 of groceries, cool. If you spent $800, $900 worth of groceries on your credit card, though, you overspent somehow, and you already know that because you measured it. So you have to improve upon that. So that's what I would compare and contrast in terms of healthy debt, unhealthy debt.
I love
Credit
that.
cards are a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Be
And
smart.
I'm thinking of like calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
If I know my maintenance calories are 2,700 and every week my average I'm putting down 3,000, simple math tells me that I'm going to gain weight. And at some
Yep.
point that's going to be a problem, right? And it's, slippery slope. It might not feel like a problem right now, but if I don't make changes, it
When
will
you have to
be.
buy a new pair of pants, that's when you realize it's too late.
Well, and that's an easy, low cost problem,
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really, really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate the kind of fitness carryover, and hopefully anybody who listens or watches this can see the analogies. If you have questions, please reach out to Drew, Granite Wealth Management. Obviously he's distinguished himself as quite the smart cat, and anyone who knows us knows that we only have the highest caliber individuals in this podcast. So,
Yep.
so for better or for worse, you're
That's why I'm
associated with us
here,
now.
Shoot.
I'm only here because it was my idea, wasn't it?
this is all
Not
Kevin's fault.
smart human.
We never actually talked about thumbs wrapped over or under the bar. We avoided that one. But real quick, final thoughts, questions or concerns about anything that we talked about today, Drew?
No, I think it just comes down to just what I talked about in the long spiel, better being better, and how does that happen? I regularly challenge people, do one workout a week for quality. Turn the clock off, maybe turn the music off. listen to your breathing, look how hard you're struggling, and see if you can just do a simple workout that maybe if you were doing it for time, might take you 5 to 10 minutes. Do it for quality, and don't count any of your reps that you wouldn't qualify as satisfactory at a minimum, right? And that'll probably change your mind in the value of gymnastics and the value of low weight, high quality barbell movements, things like that, right? And you'll probably find a ton of value, and you'll probably actually realize I don't need as many metcons as I think I need.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Kev, same question.
I agree with the workout without the music. Build some character. Get hard.
It hurts.
I agree with it. I don't want to agree with it though.
I got to listen to all these thoughts.
I didn't want to agree with the handstand push-up standard this year. Still fucking did it.
True story.
But yeah, work out without the music. Don't wrap your thumb. It's fine. That's it. That's all I got.
Better is better. More is not better. Heavier is not better. Better is better. I think that's a great place to end it.
Yep.
Well, Drew, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come and jibber jabber with us. I appreciate it. Yeah. Kevin, as always, wrap your thumbs. Be better.
No, don't tell me what to do.
All right. Everyone, will see you later.